The need to change our way of thinking. Well, my dear brothers, first of all, it is necessary to know the laws of Gnostic esoteric work if, in truth, we truly want a radical and definitive change. In the name of truth, we will say that if there is any place where we must begin working on ourselves, it must be in relation to the mind and feelings. It would be absurd to start working with the motor center, for example, which, as you know, is related to habits, customs, and actions of that organ or center. Obviously, that would be like starting with absurd fakirism. And speaking of fakirs, in India, there are fakirs who, for example, lift an arm and hold it up indefinitely until it becomes stiff. There are others who stand in one place for 20 or 30 years until they turn into statues. But in the end, what do these fakirs gain? They develop a little willpower, and that's it. We cannot think that they are going to create the body of conscious will, clearly not. You cannot recreate any body outside of the ninth sphere. If it were possible to create a body without the ninth sphere, then we would be born from the air, or from the waters of a lake, or between rocks. We wouldn't be the children of a man and a woman. But we are, in fact, children of a man and a woman, so creation always takes place in the ninth sphere, which is obvious. Therefore, no fakir could create the body of conscious will away from the ninth sphere. So, those who dedicate themselves to fakirism gain nothing, except to develop a little willpower, and that's all. To begin with the motor center would be absurd. Even more so, to begin working with the sexual center without having a proper understanding of the Gnostic doctrine is equally absurd. One who starts under these conditions doesn't know what they are doing, doesn't have a clear understanding of the work in the forge of the Cyclops, and may fall, obviously, into grave errors. Let us remember that the first center is the intellectual, the second is emotional, the third is motor, the fourth is instinctive, and the fifth is sexual. There is also the sixth, which is the superior emotion, and the seventh, the superior mind. But if we started, in truth, with the lower centers of the organic machine, we would fall into error. First of all, in these studies, we must begin with the intellectual and emotional centers. We truly need to change our way of thinking. Otherwise, we will continue down the wrong path. For example, what good would it be for you to attend these lectures if you don't change your way of thinking? Many esoteric exercises are given to you here, you are doctrinally guided, but if you don't change your way of thinking, what good is all that you receive here? You are told that you must dissolve the ego, you are told that you must sacrifice for humanity, you are told that you must create the higher existential bodies of the being, etc. But if you continue thinking as you did before, with the same mental habits as in the past, what good is all that you hear here? You are told that you must disintegrate the ego, but you continue with your old mental habits, with your outdated systems and ways of thinking. So, what good is the information you are given? The Holy Scriptures speak very clearly and precisely, very near to John the Baptist, about the old wine and the new wine. No one, Christ says, would pour new wine into old wineskins, because the old wineskins would burst. Thus, new wineskins are needed for new wine. The great Kabir Jesus also says that no one would patch an old garment with pieces of new cloth. For example, tearing a new suit to patch an old one, that would be absurd, wouldn't it? Similarly, this new teaching is like new wine, it needs a new wineskin. What is that wineskin? Well, the mind. If we don't abandon outdated ways of thinking, if we continue thinking with the same habits we had before, we are simply wasting our time. There is a need to change our way of thinking. For the new wine, a new wineskin is needed. So, we need to completely change our way of thinking in order to receive this teaching. That is the critical point, because if we receive this teaching and add it to the way we used to think, to our old mental habits, then we are doing nothing, we are deceiving ourselves. Trying to hitch the cart of the Gnostic teaching to our old cart, all damaged by time and full of junk and filth, is deceiving ourselves. It is, above all, a matter of preparing the vessel to receive the wine of the Gnostic teaching. That vessel is the mind. Only then, with a new vessel, transformed with a truly magnificent vessel, can one receive the wine of the Gnostic teaching. And this is what I want all my brothers to understand. We need to eliminate negative emotions from ourselves, because those negative emotions do not allow for a deep change. It is impossible to transform if we still have negative emotions within us. We must eradicate negative emotions from our hearts, as they are truly harmful in every sense. A person who is carried away by negative emotions becomes 100% deceitful. I already told you in my previous lecture about the case of Mr. XX, who is currently on the verge of death. This good man suffered a cerebral embolism. Why? It's clear, because someone misinformed him that his sister had been a victim of fraud. This report was later examined and turned out to be false. But this man, who loves his sister, believed this defamatory lie and took it so to heart that he had a cerebral embolism. He is now on the verge of death. You see the case. So, negative emotions lead us to failure. His sister is still convinced that she was the victim of fraud, and it is obvious that she is slandering an innocent person, but she is sure she was the victim. I personally examined the case and realized that she was deceiving herself, lying to herself, a victim of negative emotions, and in turn, unconsciously slandering another. So, as I told you, and I repeat, negative emotions turn a person into a liar. Observe how people lie, driven by negative emotions. They make false judgments and then regret it, but it's too late, they've already made them. Therefore, we must eliminate negative emotions from our nature. Lies, indeed, are a false connection. Normally, the energy of the Father, the life of the Ancient of Days, that is, of our inner deep being, flows through the cosmic inner organization until it reaches the mind. But if we make a false connection, that energy can no longer flow. It is as if the electric wire were cut. The electrical energy would no longer reach the light bulb or bulbs that illuminate us. Thus, lying, as I have already told you and repeat, is a false connection. Usually, when one is filled with negative emotions, one becomes a liar. That is the reality of the matter. If we truly understand all of this and begin to change our way of thinking and feeling, soon this will be reflected in our actions. Once one has changed the way they think, feel, and act, they are perfectly ready to begin working with the mysteries of sex. And that is the mistake of some missionaries, that people begin working with Maithuna in the ninth sphere right away, without even knowing the body of doctrine. This is absurd, because people who have not changed their way of thinking, who continue with their same habits, people who maintain their same ways of feeling, who are victims of negative emotions, do not understand these sexual mysteries and profane them. That is why Paracelsus insists that, first of all, one must know the science before entering to work in the ninth sphere, and he is right about this. Philippus Theophrastus Bombastus von Hohenheim, Aureolus Paracelsus. Let us begin, then, by changing our way of thinking and feeling. Many here receive esoteric teachings, they are given to them, but they continue to think as they did before, as they thought 20 years ago. What happens then? We are wasting time. If people are given the teachings to self-realize, to change, and they continue to think as before, obviously, things are going very badly. I know little Gnostic brothers who have been in the Gnostic teachings for 20 and 30 years, and they still think as they did when they were 20 or 30 years old. Very knowledgeable, yes. They manage the ideas very well, but if one carefully examines their life, their habits, one will see that they are the same as before. I know brothers, even very diligent ones, missionaries and all, who speak very well about Gnosis, who manage the body of doctrine in an extraordinary way, but I have been observing them, and it turns out they act as they did before they were Gnostics. They act as they did 30 years ago. They have the old habits they had when they knew nothing about these studies. They continue with those same old habits. So, what are those brothers doing then? Obviously, they are deceiving themselves miserably, as this is obvious. Thus, we must begin by changing the way of thinking and then the way of feeling, pouring the new wine, the Gnostic wine, into new wineskins and not into old wineskins. A decrepit mind, full of old habits from 20 and 30 years ago, is not prepared to receive the wine of Gnosis. A mind like that necessarily needs to go through a total change. Otherwise, time is being miserably wasted. With all this, what do we want to know? We want to awaken consciousness, right? That's the truth. That's what we want, to wake up. In the Eastern world, it is not ignored that people are asleep. No one ignores this. But in the Western world, people believe they are awake, and yet they do things they don't want to do. They go to war when they don't want to go to war, but they always go, even if they don't want to. Why? Because they are hypnotized. You know that if we order a hypnotized subject, for example, to go and kill someone, they go and kill them, and this is already anticipated in the penal code of all the countries of the earth. The same happens with people from all over the world. They are hypnotized, but they believe they are awake. If they are told that the time has come to go to war, they go to war. They don't want to go, but they go. Why? Because they are hypnotized, and the hypnotized remains hypnotized. This is very serious and terribly true. We need to get out of the hypnotic sleep, that's true. But well, let's see how we get out of the hypnotic sleep. If we are content with our mental habits, with our way of reasoning, with our sentimental habits, with our various habits or customs, inherited from family, then, even if we are listening here, in this room, to the teachings, we are simply wasting time. Ask yourselves, why have you come? For what purpose are you gathered in this room? If you are here out of mere curiosity, then it would have been better if you hadn't come. If you are truly motivated by the desire to change, but you remain very content with your old ways of thinking, you are simply deceiving yourselves. If you want to hitch the cart of Gnosis to your old train, corroded by time and rotten to the core, then you are playing a very foolish game that leads to nowhere. So, let's not deceive ourselves. If you want to change, let's be serious and begin by changing our way of thinking. Each person has a way of thinking, and each person believes their way of thinking is the most correct. But, in reality, the various ways of thinking of each person, or of everyone collectively, have nothing correct about them, because they are hypnotized. How can a person who is hypnotized think correctly? But you believe you are thinking correctly. There lies your error. Your mental habits are useless. If you want to change, well, here is the new teaching. Here is the wine of Gnosis. But please, bring new wineskins for that wine, not old wineskins. Because new wine breaks the old wineskins. I am interested in teaching the brothers, but teaching them seriously. And that's why I invite you to change your way of thinking. Have you ever reflected on what consciousness is? What could you compare consciousness to? Well, it's like a beam of light that I direct toward one place or another. That's obvious. We must learn to place consciousness where it needs to be placed. Where our consciousness is, there we will be. Those of you listening to me right now, are you sure that each of your consciousnesses is here? If it is here, I am pleased. But are we certain that it is here? It might be that it is at home right now. It could be at the bar. It might be in the supermarket, and that here we are only seeing the facade of one or another brother's personality. Thus, where consciousness is, there we are. Consciousness is something we need to learn to place intelligently where it belongs. If we place our consciousness in a bar, it will process accordingly to the bar. If we place it in a brothel, it will process there. And if we place it in a market, we'll have a good or bad merchant. Wherever consciousness is, there we will be. Unfortunately, consciousness is bottled up, and a lustful self can take our consciousness to a brothel. A drunken self could drag it to a bar. A greedy self may carry it to a market. A murderous self could lead it to an enemy's house, and so on. Does it seem right to you not to know how to manage your consciousness? I understand it is absurd to take it to places where it shouldn't be. That's obvious. Unfortunately, I repeat, our consciousness is currently bottled up, trapped among the various inhuman elements we carry within us. We need to break all those elements within which consciousness is imprisoned. But I say, would we do that if we didn't change our way of thinking? If we are perfectly happy with our old, outdated, and anachronistic habits that we hold in our minds, would we even care about awakening consciousness? Of course not. If we want to change, we must start changing right now. Change our mental habits, our way of thinking. When one truly changes, it sparks internal changes. When one shifts their way of thinking, they can then think about making a total internal change. But if one doesn't change their way of thinking, if those old, outdated habits still exist in the mind, how can one claim they will bring about a change in their inner consciousness? That's not possible. It would be contradictory to think one thing and do another. It's truly not possible. So, we need to take control of our own consciousness, place it where it should be placed, and position it where it should be. Learning to put it in one place and learning to remove it is a wonderful gift, but a gift that we are not using wisely. Really, the only thing we have inside is consciousness. It's the most worthy thing we have. The rest is not. The various psychic aggregates that we have within us are in no way worthy. The only worthy, real, and valuable thing in us is consciousness, but it's asleep, and we don't know how to manage it. The psychic aggregates carry it wherever they please. We really don't know how to use it, and that is truly lamentable. If we want a change, but a profound change, we must also begin to learn what this thing called consciousness is. In the Eastern world, we have been told that, before the bodhisattva is born within us, the bodhicitta must arise within us. But first of all, what is this thing called bodhisattva? Some of you may know, and others may not. Blavatsky says that a master who possesses the causal, mental, astral, and physical bodies is a bodhisattva, that the human soul or causal soul, dressed in such bodies, is a bodhisattva. She makes a clear distinction between the master itself, which is Atman Buddhi, that is, the intimate and the soul consciousness, and the bodhisattva, which is the human soul clothed with the higher existential bodies of being. But the Mahayana Buddhism, or Mahayanic Buddhism, is more demanding. It only recognizes as bodhisattvas those who have sacrificed for humanity over successive Maha-manvantaras. There are two kinds, says Mahayanic Buddhism, of beings. One would be the Pratyeka Buddhas, and those aspiring to be Pratyeka Buddhas, who are the Sravakas. These never sacrifice for humanity, ever. They struggle, yes, to change, and they do change, but they never give their lives for their brothers, and of course, they never embody the inner Christ either. The others are the true bodhisattvas, those who have renounced the happiness of nirvana out of love for humanity, those who, over various Maha-manvantaras, have shed their blood for humanity, who, while being able to live happily in nirvana, have renounced any happiness for their brothers on earth. They are the only ones who can truly embody the Christ. But let's return to bodhicitta. What is bodhicitta? It is consciousness already awake, developed, turned into the golden embryo. It is the true, silver armor, that can protect us from the powers of darkness. That gives us wisdom, experience. Before a bodhisattva arises within someone, bodhicitta emerges, that is, the awakened and developed consciousness. You see how valuable this gift called consciousness is. It is sad that humanity has consciousness bottled up in the ego. And of course, as long as people continue thinking as they do, feeling as they feel, and clinging to their same old rancid habits, they will not be able to awaken consciousness, it will remain hypnotized. And consequently, as a corollary, we will say that in such people, bodhicitta will never arise. When bodhicitta, which is developed and awakened consciousness, arises in someone, in the aspirant, then soon after, the bodhisattva appears. Obviously, the bodhisattva forms within the psychological climate of bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is grand. Truly, my dear brothers, it is great when one truly changes their way of thinking, because then, and only then, will they work to awaken consciousness. Then and only then, will they undertake serious work that leads to the birth of bodhicitta. Before that, it is not possible. We live in a world, unfortunately, of pain. You are all filled with pain, with suffering. Happiness? It doesn't exist in this world, it's not possible. As long as there is ego, there must be pain. As long as we continue with our old ways of thinking, we will not be happy. As long as we are victims of negative emotions, any kind of happiness becomes impossible. We truly need to reach happiness, but we could not achieve such a feat if we do not awaken consciousness. And we will never awaken consciousness if we continue with the current way we think. So first, let's look at how we are thinking. Let's change that outdated way of thinking. Let us prepare new wineskins for the new wine, which is Gnosis. And thus we will work truly but seriously. This world, in itself, is the product of the law of origination. This world is sustained by the laws of cause and effect, which are the laws of karma, also called laws of action and consequence. Such action, such consequence. This is quite a complex world. It is a world of associations, multiple combinations, endless dualism, the struggle of opposites, etc. In these circumstances, it is not possible for happiness to exist in this world. Each of us has to pay our karma. We are full of debts. That karma, obviously, brings us much pain, much bitterness. We are not happy. Many believe that we could reach happiness through the mechanics of evolution. This is a false concept because mechanics are mechanics. The law of evolution, and also that of involution, constitute the mechanical axis of this machine called nature. There is evolution in the grain that germinates, in the plant that grows, and eventually bears fruit. There is involution in the plant that falls into decay and, ultimately, turns into a pile of logs. There is evolution in the child being formed in the mother's womb, in the creature that is born, grows, and lives under the sun. But there is also involution in the human being who ages, declines, falls into decrepitude, and finally dies. All of this is completely mechanical. The law of karma is also mechanical, in a sense, in the causative sense, viewed in the light of the 12 Nidanas. There is mechanics in that. We need to free ourselves, precisely, from the law of karma. We need to free ourselves from this mechanical movement of nature. We need to become free. And this will not happen through mechanical evolution. Any mechanical evolution proceeds according to the laws of cause and effect, the laws of associations, mutual combinations, etc. What is mechanical is mechanical. We need to free ourselves from the law of evolution and also from the law of involution. We need to take the great leap to fall into the illuminating void. Obviously, there is an antithesis between the theory of relativity that Einstein preached and the illuminating void. Relativity is relative. The machinery of relativity operates with the law of opposites, with dualism, etc. In the struggle of antitheses, there is pain, and that is not happiness. If we want authentic happiness, we must step outside this mechanical system of relativity. Take the great leap, I repeat, to fall into the bosom of the illuminating void. I experienced the illuminating void in my youth. I was only about 18 years old when I was able to make the great leap, to pass beyond time and experience that which is not of time, that which we could call the experience of prajna paramita in its rawest realism. It is not unnecessary to emphasize to you that this experience could be repeated 3 times. I then understood what sunyata was. I could live it. In the illuminating void, there is no conceptual dualism of any kind. The machinery of relativity would not function in the illuminating void. The law of mutual mechanical combinations and associations is not possible in the illuminating void. The entire theory of relativity by Einstein would be destroyed in the illuminating void. Undoubtedly, the experience of the illuminating void is only possible in a state of samadhi. In the state of samadhi, or as it is also called, in the state of prajna paramita. In the illuminating void, there are no forms of any kind. One could say that there one passes beyond the universe and the gods. In the illuminating void, one can provide a correct answer to the question, if the entire universe is reduced to unity, what would unity be reduced to? Such an answer is not possible for the logical mind, or at least for the mind that operates according to formal logic. But in the illuminating void, such an answer is not necessary. There, the answer is a manifest, defined reality. If all things are reduced to unity, unity is also reduced to all things. Then, whoever enters that state of Maha Samadhi, so to speak, lives in all things, without form, and this, in itself, is already grand, sublime, and ineffable. Immersing oneself definitively in sunyata, that is, in the definitive illuminating void, is only possible by taking the great leap and on the absolute condition of having gone through total Buddhist annihilation. Otherwise, it would not be possible. At that time, I had not yet gone through Buddhist annihilation, and obviously, as I approached the great reality, consciousness expanded immensely. It is clear that in this situation, not having gone through Buddhist annihilation, I felt an unspeakable terror, which is why I returned to Einstein's universe of relativity. I repeat, 3 times I experimented with the illuminating void, and I knew, in the sunyata, transcendental lived experience, that beyond the void there is something, that which is called, thusness, the great reality. I knew it with an intuition of a transcendental nature because, in the realm of intuition, or within the world of intuition, there are different degrees of intuition. Undoubtedly, the highest degree of intuition belongs to philosophical religious or philosophical mystical minds. This is the type of intuition that corresponds to prajna paramita. This faculty allowed me to know that beyond the world of the illuminating void lies the great reality. Well, I want to affirm to you emphatically that this path of Gnosis leads to the great reality. The great reality or thusness, sunyata, prajna paramita, lies beyond the universe of relativity, that is, beyond this mechanical system of relativity, and beyond, much further beyond, the illuminating void. Thus, thusness transcends these two opposites, which I would call the mechanics of relativity and the illuminating void. The illuminating void is not the final word, it is the antechamber to thusness, that is, the great reality. I am speaking to you, not in a merely theoretical way. In past Maha Manvantaras, I experienced thusness, and since I know it, I must bear living witness to it. What is important for us is to undergo a supreme annihilation so that consciousness, transformed into bodhicitta and fully awakened, can take the great leap to fall into the illuminating void. One more step, and we will reach thusness. But, as I tell you, we must begin by changing our way of thinking to work correctly on ourselves. By truly disintegrating the undesirable psychic elements we carry within, we could then achieve the awakening of consciousness and the development of bodhicitta. If we first changed our way of thinking, it is necessary to know how to meditate, to understand what the technique of meditation is. The object of meditation is very simple. What do we seek through meditation? Peace, tranquility. It might seem very superficial what we are saying, and you might object that we could calm ourselves down with a bottle of wine, right? Of course. You could also object that we could calm ourselves by listening to a Beethoven symphony. That, you could say to me. But, in reality, truly achieving tranquility is the most difficult thing you could imagine. No one could have mental peace, have their mind in holy peace, without first eliminating from their intellectual center all the outdated and untimely thoughts they carry. No one could have peace in their heart if they had not first eliminated negative and harmful emotions from within themselves. So, when a Gnostic Arhat, immerses themselves in meditation, they seek tranquility. In those moments, they intend to work on some inhuman element they have discovered within themselves through self-observation. Perhaps they discovered anger. Well, they will then dedicate themselves to understanding the psychic aggregate of anger until they reduce it to dust with the help of their Divine Mother Kundalini, whom they must invoke for assistance. Or perhaps they discovered they have the psychic aggregate of hatred. Then, they will set out to disintegrate that aggregate so that love may arise in its place. As one disintegrates all those inhuman psychic aggregates we carry within, consciousness will begin to awaken. Much is said in Gnosis about sex, but we must first change our way of thinking, so that we can gain rich information, so that we become more aware of the teaching. Only then can we successfully work in the blazing furnace of Vulcan. We do not, in any way, wish to avoid tonight the sexual mysteries. It is good for you to understand that the path that leads to suchness is, and I completely underline this, absolutely sexual, and this must be understood. Unquestionably, a single man or a single woman can dissolve, through much understanding, 50% of psychic aggregates as long as they appeal to the Divine Mother Kundalini during meditation. But there are very heavy psychic elements that belong to the world of the 96 laws. These are not disintegrated except, exclusively, with the electric grinder of the physicists, with the swastika in motion, which generates a certain type of transcendent sexual electricity. Obviously, the serpent woman, that is, the Kundalini princess, the divine cosmic mother, is strengthened by that type of electricity. And then, with her electric power, she can atomically disintegrate the heavier psychic elements in which consciousness is bottled up. Thus, little by little, the moment arrives when consciousness is completely liberated and awakened, ready to take the great leap and fall into the illuminating void, which is the antechamber of the great reality. In this world, we have been heavily criticized because we emphasize sex. Many assume that there are many paths that can lead to the great reality. Obviously, everyone is very free to think as they wish, but in the name of truth and through direct mystical experience, accumulated in the depths of my consciousness over successive Maha Manvantaras, I can tell you that the path that directly leads to the great reality, to suchness, beyond the illuminating void and the mechanics of relativity, is absolutely sexual, 100%. Those who dissent on this issue reveal, through their psychological behavior, a lack of understanding of the raw reality. It is obvious that anyone who has had true experience in these matters, over successive Maha Manvantaras, knows very well that this is the case, and that it is not possible to definitively escape this mechanics of relativity through any door or any path other than the direct one, the one that leads to the great reality. Sunyata is a very interesting Buddhist term that perfectly indicates the lived mystical experience of someone who has not only experienced the illuminating void, but, I repeat, within the strictly mystical Buddhist terrain. I disagree with many mystics or orthodox Buddhists who place the illuminating void as the ultimate. We, the Gnostics, go beyond the mechanics of relativity, beyond this machinery of Einstein's theory of relativity, based on conceptual dualism, and also, much beyond the illuminating void. We want the great reality. The lived experience, sunyata, the lived experience of the prajna paramitas. Thanks be to God, we have within us consciousness. It is, precisely, the most precious gift. It's a pity that it is trapped within the ego. But if we manage to liberate consciousness, then we will be ready for the great leap, for the supreme leap. A liberated consciousness is a consciousness that can immerse itself in the great reality of life, free in its movement. This great reality is inexhaustible happiness, beyond the body of affections and the mind. It is a happiness impossible to describe with words. We all want happiness, and we don't have happiness. We need to be happy. But it is not possible to be happy in a world of combinations. It is not possible to be happy within this machinery of relativity. Remember that the ego is time, that the ego is a book of many volumes, and that it is subject to the laws of cause and effect. It is time for us to think about liberating ourselves from karma, liberating ourselves from this painful world, from this infernal machinery. It is time for us to think about the true bliss of the great reality. Therefore, tonight I invite you to change your way of thinking. Because if you change, you will be able to work on yourselves to liberate consciousness. But if you do not change your way of thinking, if you only want this doctrine to hook it to your train, one more car, attached to your old, decrepit, and degenerate train, well, you are wasting your time. I want, above all, happiness for you, the true bliss of being. So, my dear brothers, this concludes tonight's talk. However, there is something I must add before closing this talk. We need you to learn to meditate deeply, to know how to meditate. When one has achieved true concentration, one arrives at true bliss. See, if I hadn't experienced the illuminating void in my youth, I wouldn't be speaking to you now in the way I am. That vivid experience was never erased from my consciousness, nor from my mind, nor from my heart. It is possible that in one of these samadhis, that is, in a practice of deep meditation, the consciousness of a human being can escape from the ego to experience the bliss of the illuminating void. It is obvious that if one succeeds, they will gladly work on themselves. They will work with zeal, because they will have truly experienced, in the absence of the ego, that which is the truth, that which is beyond time, that which is beyond the body, affections, and mind. Here, I have taught you a simple way to meditate, because there is a type of meditation dedicated to the self-exploration of the ego, with the purpose of disintegrating it, turning it to ashes. But there is also another type of meditation, whose objective is to one day reach the experience of the real. I hope you achieve this so that you feel inwardly encouraged and work on yourselves. However, I believe it is necessary to have some mantra to help. The mantra I will give you tonight is very simple. I already gave you one word of this mantra in a previous talk, and you will remember it, gate. But tonight I will give you the full words of the entire mantra. Gate, gate, P-A-R-A-G-A-T-E, P-A-R-A-S-A-M-G-A-T-E, Bodhi, S-U-A, Ha. It must have been recorded on the tapes and also in your hearts. I repeat, gate, gate, P-A-R-A-G-A-T-E, P-A-R-A-S-A-M-G-A-T-E, Bodhi, S-U-A, Ha. This mantra is pronounced softly, or with the mind and heart. It can also be used as a silenced word, because there are two types of word, articulated word, and silenced word. The silenced word is powerful. The body is completely relaxed, and after it is relaxed, you surrender completely to your inner deep God, without thinking about anything, only reciting, with the mind and heart, the full mantra, gate, gate, P-A-R-A-G-A-T-E, P-A-R-A-S-A-M-G-A-T-E, Bodhi, S-U-A, Ha. Meditation must be very deep, very profound. Eyes closed, the body relaxed, completely surrendered to your inner God. Not a single thought should be allowed in those moments. The surrender to your God must be total, and only the mantra should resonate in your heart. I understand that this mantra opens the eye of Dangma. This profound mantra will one day lead you to experience, in the absence of the ego, the illuminating void. Then you will know what sunyata is. Then you will understand what prajna paramita is. Perseverance is what is needed. With this mantra, you can go very far. It is worth experiencing the great reality, at least once in life. Because in this way, one is filled with enthusiasm for the fight against oneself. That is the advantage of sunyata. That is the greatest advantage that exists in relation to the experience of the real. And so that tonight's meditation and the mantra are used properly, we are going to enter into meditation with the mantra for a while. I ask all the brothers, then, to enter into meditation. Relax all your bodies, turn off the lights, first of all. Total relaxation of the physical body. Complete relaxation and total surrender to your inner deep God. Do not think about anything. Nothing, nothing, nothing. You will recite the mantra. I will repeat it many times so you don't forget it. After this meditation, you can write it down. That's what the recorders are for. I will repeat it. Gati, Gati, P-A-R-A-G-A-A-T-E, P-A-R-A-S-A-M-G-A-T-E, B-O-D-H-I, S-U-A-A, H-A-A-A. I repeat. He repeats it 7 times. Keep repeating it with your hearts, with your minds. Do not think about anything, nothing, nothing. Surrender completely to your God. Feel each of you as a corpse, like a deceased. I repeat, Gati, Gati, Paragamgate, Parasamgate, Bodhi, Suaa, ha. He continues repeating it several times. Keep repeating.